There's a new $20 million a year expense if you want to be in this club. It costs $20 million a year more next year than it did this year.
A lot going on right now in college
what
sports.
This world does not need is another AD complaining, okay? You have to accept the fact that you cannot control the outcome. What you can control every day is like, am I doing the best I possibly can? We had some really high quality coaches that were very interested in our job. This is a unique opportunity. Now, I get things done, right? But I'm so fragmented because I'm trying to touch a lot of different people because there's so many different constituencies that are key to us being successful, that we're the fastest growing fan base in the Power Five since 2019. Coach Dickert really doesn't spend any time worrying about what it used to be.
Yeah.
He's totally focused on what it is and what our advantages are and what we can be. With trust comes investment, and with investment can come success. And then you get success and you get happy and you can go back and get more investment and do even more. It's easy for people to say, oh, well, these aren't going to be real students anymore, or they're just pros or whatever. I actually have encouraged our people, like, don't let somebody say that about Wake Forest to you.
Just what do you think the future of the ACC looks like? Wake Forest Athletic Director John Currie is next up. John, appreciate you doing this. Excited to talk to you.
Thanks, Adam. Welcome to Wake Forest.
Yeah, appreciate having us out. My first time here. Beautiful facility. I mean, and campus is beautiful. It's awesome.
And the best thing about these $175 million in new facilities over the last 10 years is they're almost all paid for. People like Bob McCrary and Ben Sutton and Alan Fox and others have enabled us to do things in a really fiscally responsible way, but also really first class.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's got to be a crazy time to be an athletic director, huh? A lot going on right now in college sports.
What this world does not need is another AD complaining, okay? So I got no complaints. We got a great new football coach. Our tennis team's #1 in the country. Our baseball team's top 15. Our basketball team's won 85 games in the last 4 years. And so we got a lot of good stuff going on here.
I was thinking about what I wanted to start with and ask you. And I was thinking, you took this job in 2019, right? About 6-7 years ago. What's the biggest thing that's changed in your day-to-day from then to now? So
ironically, I was actually introduced as the next athletic director at Wake Forest on March 4th, 2019. So about 6 years.
Here we are,
right? And I was really lucky because I followed my mentor, Ron Wellman, who was the AD here for 27 years, and we actually had a joint press conference. It was really about his retirement, and then, okay, this guy's next.
You're the sideshow.
Yeah, sideshow. Absolutely. It was a celebration of all of his accomplishments. And then I was kind of assistant to the president for about a month and a half, which was like the best job I ever had. And then I started as athletics director on May the 1st. But this is actually my 15th year as a Power 5 AD, spending all that time in the Big 12 and the Southeastern Conference and here. 31 years of college athletics since I started my career here at Wake as a graduate in 1993, August 16th, 1993. Wow. And one of the things that's really interesting about that, Adam, is that like some of the stuff that's happening, like it's cyclical. It happened before. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happened at K-State in 2011, right? And then there's other things that come up, and there's a rule that everybody's concerned about, and now I'm the old guy. And I say, well, what happened is back in 1994, and people look at me like I'm 123 years old. Yeah,
that's funny. Well, if there's one moment you could point to in your career that's really allowed you to be here today, the most impactful time or moment, what would it be?
Yeah, I can't say any one time. Well, I guess I have to say Ron Wellman's invitation to, when I met him, I was on a student government committee and he was a brand new AD. And he was going around meeting students, right? And he said, well, and I talked to him and he invited me to come by his office. So if that hadn't have happened, I wouldn't be here.
And you were a student at the time?
I was a senior at Wake Forest. And I think I was the angry one, right? It was a student government meeting. It was my ticket, Rodney Rogers is playing, right? But if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. But I would say more than that, I've been unbelievably fortunate that everybody I've worked for has truly cared about me, and not just me, what can I do for them, but like my growth and development. And they've all been really high integrity people. And so going back to Ron Wellman and Charlie Patterson and some others here, and then going to Tennessee, Mike Hamilton, Doug Dickey, who I still stay in touch with, Joan Cronin, the president at Kansas State, Kirk Schultz, just another incredible mentor, all who cared about me. I was really fortunate. I've been able to work with great people. And now here at Wake Forest, I got a great president, Susan Arwenti. We've got a board of trustees trustees at Wake Forest that is the most aligned it's ever been about how important athletics is to help support and shape and spread the message about what we do at Wake Forest, because what we do at Wake Forest is different than any other university in terms of our scale, our personalness, our intimacy, but also our bigness in terms of what we do from our sports. We're part of the second largest nonprofit hospital system in the country, with the advocate system in 10 different states. So it's really hard. I'm so glad you came, because it's really hard to understand that what this place is really different. You can't put it in a box. And in this day and age, it's our advantage.
Yeah. You mentioned the board alignment. I've talked a lot, especially with football coaches, about how important alignment is from head coach to athletic director to president or chancellor and to the board. How important is that alignment for you to get done what you need to get done? And I'm sure you've seen, you don't got to call it out a different place, but I'm sure you've seen the opposite, where the alignment's not there and how challenging it can be.
Yeah, well, I have seen that, and I've lived that, and I've witnessed that, and that's really, really hard. But a lot of it is about, it's not necessarily anybody's fault all the time. Where we have evolved to in 2025 is that in higher education, especially full service universities, as I like to call them, that have theaters, and they've got residential college and graduate programs and all these kind of things. The full service model of higher education, part of it is big time college athletics, right? And all you got to do is look at those Power Four conferences and the schools that are in those Power Four conferences. And so if you look at Wake Forest, right, in the Atlantic Coast Conference, which has the best collection of the highest rated institutions in the country, other than the Ivy League, and we probably serve a different mission and more people than the Ivy League. And we're in the best one. And we're in the conference with Stanford and Duke and Virginia and UNC Chapel Hill. It's part of our brand. And people that are choosing Wake Forest are choosing Wake Forest because, we're academically rigorous, but they're also choosing it because it's intimate. They're in small classes, they know their professors, they do research, it's a beautiful setting, right? And then we got big time sports, and we're winning national championships and ACC championships. We're playing for the ACC football championship just 4 years ago. We're on ESPN, the ACC network, and that's a big part of it.
You mentioned some of your previous stops, Kansas State, Tennessee, in your time before that. On a couple of those stops, what's the biggest lesson you learned from each of those? So maybe your time as an AD at Kansas State and Tennessee.
Well, I've learned a lot, and obviously I've made a lot of mistakes too. But ultimately, I've learned that your biggest advantage is always your people, right? And I've spent 11 years total at the University of Tennessee, which would be one of the higher resources schools in the country. And then I've worked at two schools, at Kansas State and at Wake Forest, where we weren't on the top end of the economic scale from a ticket sales standpoint, but it didn't inhibit us from winning.
So many people that watch this show are aspiring coaches or aspiring, young people that want to work in sports, be an administrator. So I'm curious, can you take us through, like, even a day like today? What's a day in the life like as an athletic director at a Power 4 program?
Well, the first thing I always say to people, and aspirational people will come in and they say, "Hey, I want to be an athletic director." And that's always like both inspiring to me. It's a little terrifying, because when I was 22 years old or 23 years old, the idea of me being like Ron Wellman, I just couldn't even imagine it. It was not even in my realm of comprehension. And so I would say the same thing that any good coach would say to anybody is like, you got to do your job and develop an expertise in a particular area that earns you trust, right? In my job now, what my job has evolved to is like communication is everything. And my and it's a real challenge for my staff, right? I'm not a very good manager of staff, right? I get things done, right? But I'm so fragmented because I'm trying to touch a lot of different people, because there's so many different constituencies that are key to us being successful. And when you think about, Adam, why it's important for Wake Forest athletics to be successful, I mean, we want to win, right? But ultimately, Wake Forest athletics is just one of the pillars upon this what this university rests, right? And so to get the university's outcomes in pro humanitate mission and educate students and have economic development in the city of Winston-Salem, for all that to happen, we've got to execute, right? And so one of the things I've realized and come to grips with, because I've always been so student-athlete focused, right? And that's the most important thing we do. And it is. But the other thing we do through athletics is we bring people together. And we create fun and engagement and community. And right now in our country, We need fun, engagement, and community when we can all come together and cheer for the same team.
Yeah. Are you an early riser in the morning? You getting up at 5, 6 a.m.?
I'm an early riser. I try to go to bed early, Adam, but sometimes I can and sometimes I don't when you got a late night game or whatever. But usually I'm up pretty early.
Yeah. I want to dive into probably the most important job you have is hiring coaches, right? And you hired a big one this offseason, your football coach, Jake Dickert. When you have a coaching search that starts, take me through kind of start to finish. What are you doing to identify the candidates, the interview process, and then actually getting a deal done? I mean, take us through kind of the inside baseball that goes down there.
Well, first of all, if you think about Wake Forest, I think we've had a very successful transition from one great football coach to another coach who I think will also be a great football coach. And Wake Forest, which is the winningest program in the state of North Carolina this century, right? It's Wake Forest. Wake Forest won the ACC championship in 2006. We were in the championship game in 2021. We were in 7 straight bowl games. We've had 2 football coaches prior to Coach Dickert. We had Jim Grobe, and then we had Dave Clawson for 11 years. And what Coach Clawson did to build and elevate this university and this community and this football program with a lot of great support from people like Prentice Baker, whose auditorium we sit in, et cetera, was truly, truly remarkable. I think I'm really lucky because I got to work 8 years for Bill Snyder at Kansas State. And then I got to work 6 years here with Dave Clawson, who's been here for 11 years. And there are a lot of similarities there about ethics and integrity and what it's all about, but also about grinding to build it up. And he did it. The way we went through a transition and the successful transition would never have happened without Dave's leadership mentality and his, as he made the decision that he was going to step away, he did that with me as a collaborator and a confidant. And because of that, because of his love for the program, we were able to be in position to do some things to move pretty quickly. If I'm good for anything in this job, I ought to be good for a Rolodex. And you're a younger guy, Adam, but a Rolodex used to be like a phone
all
contacts, right? You rolled it around, you pulled out a card.
You still have a Rolodex, or is it all on the phone now?
I've given up my Rolodex. I do still have some business cards around, okay? But so like the relationships that I have is should be one of the things that enables me to add value to Wake Forest. And because I've been, I've served now, let's see, 6 plus about 12 years here, but I had 11 years at Tennessee, 8 years at Kansas State. And so those networks and those connectivity and kind of seeing some other things, that should be part of the value I bring to this university and this community. But, we're really fortunate that this is a great place. We got a lot of advantages. We got great facilities. We're distinctive. We're in a great location. You're down in the state of North Carolina, which is the 3rd fastest growing state in the country. There's 1.7 million people within 30 minutes of where we sit right now. We're really a suburb of Charlotte. It's only about an hour and 10 minutes away. And so, and Coach Dickert will talk about, one of the great things about this job is there are a lot of great football players that can get in their car and drive to Winston-Salem in 30 minutes or a couple hours. And I believe that's how he'll build our program.
During the coaching search process, what was the moment where you said Coach Dickert's our guy?
So we're fortunate. We had some really high quality coaches that were very interested in our job. This is a unique opportunity. Really, when I go back to like what we need at Wake Forest, right? As a head coach at Wake Forest, you must be smart. And in my history and experience, I think there's intelligence has been overlooked sometimes in coaching and ADing and maybe I'm part of the problem. Maybe I'm not very smart. Maybe that's a mistake made by the leadership here. But you got to be smart to be a head coach at Wake Forest, regardless of the sport you coach, because the student athletes at Wake Forest are really smart. I was looking at the grades from the fall for men's basketball and football, and you're talking about it's a little embarrassing given my GPA, but you're talking about 3.0 and 3.5, and you're talking about really smart people, whether it's volleyball, golf, basketball, football, whatever. So you got to have a smart coach, because if you're coaching smart, those athletes will see right through them, right? They have to have high credibility and integrity. Integrity and character without a doubt. I believe that they need to have experienced something that's hard. So if you think about what Coach Dickert went through, the transition at Washington State, even taking over the job midway through COVID season, and taking over a team with 4 coaches and having to piece them all together, that's hard, right? I think they've got to have proven results. And, you look at his record, and he came in there and, a month and a half later, beat Washington, beat Wisconsin, went to bowl games, et cetera, in a place that, like Wake Forest, not the easiest place in the world to piece it all together. And then you got to have great energy, right? You got to have great energy because, man, these jobs are hard. They've always been hard, but regardless of how late you worked or how early you got up or what the other things going on that are going to weigh you down, right? You got to have energy with the student athletes. You got to have it. And he brought all those things.
Yeah. When you learn or start to realize that you're going to have a coaching opening, what are the first few things you're doing? I'm sure talking to search firms, agents, like what are some of the calls that you make right away?
Well, I'm lucky again. I've got some really good relationships and people that have helped me and advised me. Some of whom are for hire, some of them are just friends. And there's multiple ADs and presidents and other former coaches and all that kind of stuff. In this case, Scott Garrett's our deputy athletics director, Lindsey Babcock's our deputy AD, SWA. And both of those people are really just rock solid people. And then Will Pantages, our senior associate AD for communications, and Randy Castevens and Pete Boxtellis, and then a great relationship with my president, and being able to manage things the right way. Those are all really, really important. But it is important, and I said those 5 things. You got to establish what you're looking for first, right? Because there's a lot of different ways to look about it. The other thing you have to think about is what's really the market. Right. There's always like the market of, hey, what about this guy? Hey, what about this person?
Agents telling you they're guys.
Whatever. And you really have to assess, like, all right, why does our job fit that person? And figure out early on how you can get your list down to where you really need to spend your time instead of running after somebody who has no interest or is trying to leverage you or whatever. Chad Chatlos at Turnkey. Has participated, helped us with several searches. I really trust Chad. And there's other search consultants I trust too. I just, have developed a familiarity with Chad to be able to work through things.
The one thing I feel like maybe fans don't realize is as much as head coaches are selling themselves to you during the process, you're also partially selling the school to potential candidates, right? I mean, any head coach that comes here that's at a different Power 4 program or a different program in college football, D1, is going to ask questions about the commitment, what the relationship's like with you, their boss, the commitment from an NIL standpoint. So what are those things that maybe with Coach Dickert that you were saying, hey, here's why Wake Forest is set up to win long-term?
Right. Well, so it's a great question, and it brings a point that I think is really important that we've done here. And I didn't always do this. You learn. And this was, I think it's the 11th or 12th head coaching search in 15 years. So first of all, I've been really fortunate, right? Haven't had a lot of turnover. And we've had great success with those coaching hires almost universally, right? But when we hired Coach Forbes, it was in 2020 in May. You remember 2020 May? COVID.
Crazy
right?
time.
In the depths of COVID. And we were the only Power 5 job that was open. Power 4, Power 5 at the time, right? It was the only job that came open, right? And we make a change and realize, it's not like, what I've always done, which is like fly to the Denver Westin Airport or fly to the Chicago Airport Hilton or fly to the whatever and get people to come. I mean, we were transitioning into the Zoom world, right? But we got together with a group of, because our basketball team, for 11 years prior to this last 4, we averaged 12 wins a year at a place that has won ACC championships, Tim Duncan, Chris Paul, NCAA, all that kind of stuff. And so we went through this 11-year period of really underperforming basketball that really hurt our brand. And Coach Forbes is digging out of it. We got 85 wins now. We've averaged 21 a game, and we're 12-7 right now in the ACC. But to be successful, going back to that alignment thing, it's not just about who the coach is and whether or not they can draw up plays and recruit. It's about the whole university understanding how they can help the coach sell the program to prospective athletes, nurture prospective athletes, nurture support and all that kind of stuff. And so because it wasn't practical to go anywhere, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get some of my friends and campus colleagues engaged in this. And so I got our provost, our faculty athletic rep, the dean of the college. Guess what? All of those people are going to have an effect on whether or not we can be successful in basketball or football or anything else at Wake Forest. I had the dean of the Divinity School, Jonathan Walton, who's now the president of Princeton Seminary. I had Lindsey Babcock, who was our deputy AD, who she and I worked together at Kansas State. And And we had we had a Zoom, and I kind of talked them through, this is how process works. I had chat on there, looked at some candidates, looked at characteristics. And the next day we did Zoom calls with, the next 2 days, with 6 or 7 coaches, including Steve Forbes.
Yeah.
Well, those coaches, and there are a number of great ones that are on those Zooms, those coaches all told me later that it was really unique that they got to meet and see all of these people that were going to have a major impact on whether or not they could be successful, right? And then from those people across our campus, it wasn't me just showing up 2 weeks later, hey, this is our new coach. Yeah. It was me showing up, and they know the new coach. Yeah. And that is critically important. And we did the same thing with Coach Dickert, with a group of, the president of our faculty senate, the president of the faculty athletics committee, the president of the senate athletics committee, the provost, the dean, a bunch of people. Yeah. And what was interesting about it, Adam, actually, is that like we got on the call and I really didn't brief Coach Dickert very much. I was like, we're going to have this call and there's important people and you need to think about, I want them to get a feel. I'll be listening to their advice and their feelings about you. I really didn't prep them much, and they started asking him really hard questions.
Really? Yeah.
Really hard academic questions. And I was like, and he nailed them all, right? But that connectivity helped him get off the ground right away.
Yeah. What's the thing that's impressed you the most about Coach Dickert since he's been here?
I'll tell you what the thing that's impressed me the most is, obviously he's got all those things, smart, et cetera. But for a lot of us in college athletics and in higher education, and again, I'm not that old, right? I'm only 53. I'll be 54 next month. But a lot of us have spent a lot of time and energy worried about the way it used to be. God, I can't believe it's not like it used to be. I can't believe I got to do this. I can't believe this, and I can't believe that, blah, 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 blah. And Coach Dickert really doesn't spend any time worrying about what it used to be. Yeah. He's totally focused on what it is and what our advantages are and what we can be. And that has been inspirational to me and my team. And I've taken that message with our board of trustees, with our president, because it's really metaphorical to an institution. Yeah. If you spend all your time worrying about the way it used to be, and that's distracting your energy from the way it is, then you're going to be handicapped. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the changing landscape and the good old days versus now. I mean, aside from just winning games, what's the number one thing that keeps you up at night the most? What's the thing that's on your mind all the time that you're thinking about?
Right. Well, we're always, we need resources, right? So the money and the finances is always a stressor. I do worry. I'll tell you one thing I worry about right now, because we have the NIL and we'll have rev share, and Wake Forest is all in on that. It's really easy for what we really do to get lost in all that. Yeah. And it's easy for people to say, oh, these aren't going to be real students anymore, or they're just pros or whatever. And I actually have encouraged our people, like, don't let somebody say that about Wake Forest student athletes. Yeah. It's insulting to our faculty. And we have a world-class faculty because we have students that are doing incredible things in the classroom while they pursue the highest level of athletics. Yeah. They care. And our student athletes still care, even if they've got a rev share contract for $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever. Yeah. The most important thing when they walk into this room is their relationship with each other, and the main thing, and the opportunity that they know there'll be other opportunities to make money in their life, but there's never another opportunity to be part of a team, and play college athletics, regardless of the sport. So that's the thing. I hope that our fans and our investors of college sports in general know that it's changing, right? But the good stuff is still the good stuff.
Yeah. One of the things I'm fascinated by in college sports, and I'm excited to see how it plays out, is, especially with revenue share coming, is just this concept of, I mean, there's so many different pools on the donors and the revenue piece of it. You have facilities, you have rev share, you have then outside the cap NIL, whatever that ends up being, right, with collectives. And this concept of like donor fatigue and where's the revenue come from and where's the $20.5 million come from? Like, what's your strategy for how you're going to, kind of come up with the new revenue that's needed in all these different areas?
So one of the first things you have to realize or understand, and there's been moments that I've lost track of this, is that 99% of our constituents They have no idea what we're talking about.
No doubt.
They've never heard of the House case.
Yeah.
They think maybe it's at the House of Representatives. Is that something to do with the realtors lawsuit last year about the realtors monopoly or what is it, right? They have no idea it's a swimmer at Arizona State or what it means for their universities. And so as it turns out, we have a slide actually we use in presentations which starts with 2009 when the original Ed O'Bannon case was filed and goes to 2025. Then it's got some markers along the way. Well, for me, 2009 was my first year as a Power 5 athletic director. So basically, I've been living this for 15, 16 years, right? And so and I don't understand it. And so how do the people that have no idea, that don't do this all the time, understand it? And so we've been really intentional. It's a road show, right? We got a bunch of slides. We go out and we sit with groups of 15 or 20 lead donors and lead individuals, and we explain it. And we explain the why behind it, and we explain our strategy to go forward. And the best times for me and the best successes for me in my career have been when we've been able to have the time to be transparent and share information and talk about problems, because that has built the moments of trust. And with trust comes investment, and with investment can come success. And then you get success and you get happy and you can go back and get more investment and do even more, right? Just like businesses do with growing customers. So that's been a key part of what we're doing. But it comes back to the fact that most people have no idea what we're talking about.
It's true.
And you can lose them really fast. So I think our president has done a really nice job. I think our board of trustees is engaged. We've had like 26 meetings over the last year, called meetings. That's not just the phone calls, right? Over the last year, we've had audit committee, finance committee, all this kind of stuff. So if I'm proud of anything, I'm proud of how our whole university leadership structure has dove in to understand and then figure out what our strategy is.
Well, I'm sure a lot of your time recently too is figuring out when revenue share does come, how you're splitting up the money between sports, between athletes. I mean, it's essentially a pro model, right? You got salary cap, and you got to decide how much players should get paid. How much are you? I guess what's your strategy there, and then how are you planning on working with the football program? And hey, here's how much we have to allocate for the quarterback versus the running back. I mean, there's so many data analytics that go into this, right?
Well, again, we're fortunate at Wake Forest. One of our advantages is our scale, right? We have 18 sports, 13 of which are. 13 head coaches, 13 programs, 18 sports, because 6 of our sports are men's and women's, indoor, outdoor, cross country, track and field, right? So that's 6. So that John Hayes is a coach of the year again this year. We won the ACC cross country championship. We can win the national championship in men's cross country here. So that's one of our 13 units. And so unlike some of my colleagues who have, 25 head coaches that they got to work through this with, we got 13, and we can consolidate resources and be transparent with all of our people about, hey, this is a big deal, and it's going to affect everybody, and we've all got to give a little bit, but we can all gain too here, unlike some places where it's going to be really hard to avoid the scalpel somewhere else. At the same time, this is part of when we're talking to contributors and investors, there's a new $20 million a year expense if you want to be in this club and win, okay? And have a chance to win, right? If you want to be in this club of higher education in big-time college athletics, if you want to be in the club, but that's really about, it's not just about your sport, it's about your university. If you want to be in that university brand club, it costs $20 million a year more next year than it did this year. So if you have a new expense at home or in your business, what do you do first? You look at what you're currently spending dollars on, right? And you figure out, hey, maybe I don't need to spend so much on that, right? And then you got to go generate some more revenue over here as well. So certainly football and our football program at Wake Forest, as I've said, has been successful, is from a rev share standpoint, is and from a generation of revenue standpoint, is going to be really important. But we also have sports like women's golf, won the 2023 national championship, won the ACC championship again last year. Women's soccer finished second in the country this year. Men's soccer, I've mentioned, won the ACC championship. So men's tennis is currently ranked number 1 in the country, won the ITA Indoor National Championship this year. Women's tennis is in the NCAA every year. So we're pretty good at most everything. And so figuring out how we can, make everybody's world a little bit better. We're fortunate here that we have a kind of a sports-specific fundraising model. So we have coaches that have become pretty good at generating dollar investments into their program because, someone that really loves women's soccer, let's let them invest in women's soccer. They don't want to give to football. Let them invest in women's soccer, and guess what? The closer they are to it, the more they give.
No doubt. Yeah. One of the hot topics in college sports right now is the term private equity or private capital. It seems like it's being thrown around all the time, and I don't think anyone really realizes what they mean when they say it. It's just kind of like, oh, private equity is coming to college sports. Do you see private capital, private equity having a role at Wake Forest, in the ACC in general, and college sports in general? What does it actually look like?
Well, private equity exists to create return for its shareholders, right? So the first question is, how can private equity entering into this enterprise generate return for its investors, right? And I don't believe that has been demonstrated yet on a massive scale, right? Now, certainly around college athletics, whether through media or real estate development or whatever, there's a lot of returns created. But I think the jury's still out as to how that will come. We've talked to all the private equity people too. We might not be in the ticker about it, but we've researched that. We got pretty good finance people around here. We got one of the best finance and accounting programs in the world, really, here at Wake Forest and our business school. So we're as fluent as anybody on all that stuff. But we'll see how that manifests.
I've been interested in this theme that I've heard a lot of ADs or administrators talk about, is like how important brand is in today's college sports, especially with media rights deals, everything. There's a book I read one time called Brands Win Championships. And what's your take on that? How have you seen how the Wake Forest brand and the prestige and the academic success maybe gives you an advantage versus programs that have more scale or more revenue come back, all that kind of stuff? How does brand impact things?
So it's incredibly important, right? And we've done a bunch of research, and part of it came out of back in 2021, we won the ACC Atlantic Division Football Championship. The next year in 22, we're at 10th in the country. We had a massive game against Clemson. It had great ratings and all that kind of stuff. But there was a rather derisive comment made that about like the scale of Wake Forest fandom, right? And it was actually Mr. Herbstreit, who I respect. And he made a joke about like Wake Forest and its 6 fans, right, on the CFP show. And so like we actually did some research. Well, how many fans do we have? And what it came back was, we have 2.7 million fans at Wake Forest, which is pretty remarkable for a school with 80,000 alums. And we also came back that we're the fastest growing fan base in the Power 5 since 2019. It also came back that our fan base, even though this is a predominantly white institution by heritage, 44% of our fans are not white. And it came back that our fans are young, they're influential, they're affluent, pretty good group, and we're 11th out of fan numbers in the 17-team ACC, 18 with Notre Dame. We're ahead of Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech and blah, blah, blah. We're right behind NC State. And like waking up to what that means. And then, so why is that? So one, we have passionate, Wake Foresters, but we also win a lot. And we've been to all these bowl games and won national championship, went to the College World Series, and then you got guys like Tim Duncan, right, who's watching our game. He especially likes when we beat Stanford in tennis or basketball or whatever, because his daughter goes to Stanford. Then we got Chris Paul, who grew up in Winston-Salem, who's easily the most recognizable Wake Forest alum in the world. God rest Mr. Palmer's soul. So that's incredibly important, and aggressively growing our brand is one of my top priorities.
As I mentioned, a lot of young students, athletes watch the show and want to be in your shoes someday. What's a piece of advice you would give to anyone who wants to, maybe they're a young person working entry level in a sport, in administration, maybe they're a young coach. What are the things you're looking for, the advice you would give to someone trying to make it?
The first thing I would say is that they got to become an expert in something. Sometimes people I want to be an AD, so I'm going to learn a little bit about this and a little bit about that and a little bit like that. They bounce around too much. I know it's really hard right now with so many opportunities, but establishing yourself in a place, to go somewhere for 12 months and 12 months and 12 months and 20, you just don't get anywhere, in my opinion. You got to be somewhere 2 or 3 or 4 years to develop some relationships so that you can have the credibility and the trust to get more responsibility. And then ultimately you got somebody that'll vouch for you and say, you got to hire this guy, right? And that was the greatest blessing to me with some of my people that I work for, that they would vouch for me. You got to hire this guy. So that's really important. hey, I'm old fashioned, and it still matters how hard you want to work.
Yeah.
And the presence. And in this enterprise where so many people want to work in sports, you got to decide it's okay if you don't want to work in sports. You can still love love sports. You can still be part of sports. You can still have a great life, but this is not life-work balance.
Yeah.
This is life-work integration. And now you got to be disciplined to take the time for yourself when you can. But with all the people that want to work in sports, right?
Yeah.
Effort.
Yeah.
Effort and energy and getting after it and being willing to say, hey, what else can I do today? Yeah. Those things matter still.
Yeah. I talk a lot on this show about overcoming adversity. I mean, I had so much adversity in my career, and you've had so much success. And anyone who's reached your level of success has, at some point in your life, you face some ups and downs, you face some adversities. What's a moment in your life where you feel like you face some adversity, and how'd you overcome it?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've had plenty of adversity. You know, I think I interviewed for, I don't know, 6 or 8 AD jobs before I got the K-State job, which at the time wasn't regarded as a very good job, but it was like an unbelievable blessing for me, and it was a perfect fit, and we got so much accomplished there. You know, obviously when I was at Tennessee with great intentions, you know, we had a search that went bad, and, you know, I paid a political price for that. You know, it happens. It goes with the territory. But I've got a great family, a great wife, kids. I have a strong faith. And ultimately I know that you have to accept the fact that you cannot control the outcome.
No doubt.
You cannot control all the outcomes, and you can't control whether or not you ride off into the sunset or whether they're escorting you out of the building. You can't control that ultimately, because other people have influence on that. Yeah. What you can control every day is like, am I doing the best I possibly can for my institution today? Yeah. And I know this is a hard thing, and I may fail at this thing today, but that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. And I believe if you have that mentality that, hey, I'm not going to be defined by being in this job. There's other things I can do. But when I'm doing this job, I'm going to execute my fiduciary to the university, to the student athletes, to my president, to the corporation that I have. Yeah. And if that means that unfortunate consequences for me, so be it. But the most important thing for me, Adam, is I mean, obviously, I love Wake Forest. I went to Wake Forest. I love the people that I'm friendships. I love that I met my wife here, right? But the most important judge is like, am I a professional, right? And that's as I look at people, are you a professional? Are you a professional? Is that guy a professional? Yeah. And that's the, if I'm operating professionally, that means I may not make some people happy one day or another, but that's like the satisfaction to me. I was a professional and I did the right thing, even if the right thing was not popular or on the surface was unexplainable to the people that don't know why it was the right thing. And there's always going to be those situations. Yeah.
Last couple of things I got for you. I appreciate your time. I could talk to you for 2 hours about this stuff. So.
It was a lot better than my real job.
The future of the ACC. As we're sitting here today, there was some news this morning with the settlement in the ACC. I haven't even really read much on it, but just what do you think the future of the ACC looks like? There's so much going on with conference realignment, and everyone's poaching everybody, it seems like. What do you think the conference looks like in the future?
Well, I've lived conference realignment in my 15 years between my time at K-State and here, but I'm incredibly bullish on our future in the ACC. And if you think about it, what's essentially happened is this thing is boiled down to 4 power conferences. And, with the Big Ten and the SEC, the ACC, and then the Big 12, right? And the ACC's got a rock solid deal with ESPN through 2036. We've got the greatest collection of academic universities in the country. We're in a great geography and the markets and stuff we have. Our league does not have the same media rights value that SEC and the Big Ten does, right? And, candidly, Wake Forest doesn't have the same stadium size as Clemson, right? Or Florida State. But we beat Florida State 3 out of the last 4 years in football, right? And we won national championship in golf 2 years ago. And we're, competing in everything. And the scale at which we operate is such that we can operate efficiently and we can truly provide a world-class student-athlete experience. And so we also have an advantage in the ACC is geographic proximity, right? We can get in a bus. Next year, when I told Coach Dickert this, out in Pullman, which is a great place, right? But I said, look, Coach, next year we only get on the airplane twice because we got 7 home games in Winston-Salem.
He doesn't know what that's like.
We play down. We play at Duke, down I-40 and I-85. We go right up the road 2 hours to Blacksburg, 4 hours to Charlottesville. We fly to Oregon State and we fly to Florida State. That's a huge advantage economically, and it's also a huge advantage in terms of our fans being able to see us, right? Student athletes that are playing for us, their parents can come to all the games from around here and all that. It's a massive advantage.
Yeah. Say we sit down 5 years from now. What do you want Wake Forest athletics to look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hope I make it 5 years, Adam.
I'll be back 5 years. Yeah.
I'm more confident than ever, especially with what's happening with the ESPN extension. Resolving our disagreements with a couple of our long-term partners who are my friends. I think we're in such a better position than we were 2 months ago or 12 months ago. And really, as you think about college athletics in general, we've started to answer some of those questions. We get the House settlement across the finish line, et cetera. But we're 2.7 million fans. Maybe we'll have 3.5 or 4 million fans. We're doing a spectacular real estate development project, mixed use with restaurants and breweries and housing and hotel and stuff like that at a legacy called the Grounds, right next to a legacy stadium and in Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum that's $1.2 billion impact. It's going to transform this community. This is already the largest aggregation of sports and entertainment facilities west of Greensboro, north of Charlotte. We serve a massive populace. So just continuing to grow the brand and see student athletes be successful and win some more, build on those 10 national championships and 59 ACC championships. Those are the things I would like to see us do. But ultimately, that connectivity of our student athletes with our university and our alums, and bringing people together, regardless of where they went to school, bringing people together that get in there in that stadium in one way or another, sooner or later they say, go Deeks.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I appreciate all your time. It was great talking to you. Congrats on all your success. I'm excited to see how you build this Wake Forest athletics in the future. Yeah.
Thanks, Adam.
Next up.